If you think you know who the smartest person in the room is just by looking at their clothes, you're already losing. Today's story is about a man named Elias, a valet who was treated like furniture by the wealthy elite, until a young CEO took a chance on him. What happened next didn't just silence a room of billionaires, it saved a fortune and exposed a lie decades in the making. Before we dive in, please hit that subscribe button and like the video if you believe talent comes from anywhere. The humidity in Miami was stifling, but outside the Royal Palm Hotel, the cars were cool to the touch. Lamborghinis, Bugattis, and Rolls-Royces lined the driveway like jewels in a crown. Elias adjusted his burgundy vest, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. He was 65 years old, with hands that were calloused and stained permanently with oil that no amount of scrubbing could remove. To the guests of the Royal Palm, Elias was a ghost. He was the mechanism that made their cars disappear and reappear. He had no name, no history, and certainly no voice. "Hey, Pop. Snap to it." A set of keys landed in the dirt near Elias's shoes. The owner was a man in his 30s wearing a linen suit that cost more than Elias made in a year. He was leaning against a vintage Porsche 911 Turbo, checking his watch. "Careful with the clutch," the man sneered. "It's German engineering, not a tractor. Try not to stall it." Elias didn't flinch. He bent down, picked up the keys with a white-gloved hand, and looked at the car. 1978, Elias murmured softly, almost to himself. "The Widowmaker. 3.3-liter engine. You've got a slight exhaust leak on the left manifold, sir. I can hear the tick." The man laughed, a sharp, barking sound. "Stick to parking, old man. Don't pretend you know what you're looking at." Elias said nothing. He slid into the driver's seat. He didn't just park the car, he felt it. He knew the synchros in the gearbox were wearing thin before he even shifted into second. He treated the machine with a reverence the owner clearly lacked. Watching this interaction from the hotel entrance was Julian Thorne. Julian was 29, the CEO of Nebula, a tech firm that had just gone public. He was new money. Aggressive, brilliant, but deeply insecure in the world of old wealth. He was in Miami for the Concours d'Elegance auction, looking to buy a centerpiece for his collection to prove he belonged. But honestly, he didn't know a piston from a spark plug. Julian walked down the steps as Elias returned from parking the Porsche. "He was rude," Julian said, nodding toward the elevator where the Porsche owner had disappeared. Elias smiled politely, eyes fixed on the ground. "It is part of the job, sir. May I take your vehicle?" Julian looked at Elias. He saw the way the older man's eyes lingered on a passing Jaguar E-Type. It wasn't the look of envy, it was the look of analysis. "You heard a manifold leak from 10 feet away?" Julian asked. Elias hesitated. Valets weren't supposed to have opinions. "Sound travels, sir. That specific flat-six engine has a distinctive rhythm. When the gasket goes, it develops a syncopated tap. Like a drummer missing a beat." Julian's eyebrows shot up. "You know cars." "I know machines, sir. I'm Julian." "Elias." "Well, Elias," Julian said, making a split-second decision that would change both their lives. "I have a McLaren 720s. But I'm not here to drive it. I'm here to buy a 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO at the auction tonight. Do you know it?" Elias's demeanor changed instantly. His posture straightened. The polite servant mask slipped, revealing a spark of intense passion. "The 250 GTO. Chassis 3413? Or are they claiming it's the lost 4153? Only 36 were ever made. Bizzarini's masterpiece. If it's the one I read about in the catalog, it's expected to fetch 40 million. Julian stared at him. The valet knew the chassis designer. "You're not busy tonight, are you, Elias?" "My shift ends in an hour, sir." "Go change," Julian said. "I need a consultant. And I pay better than the hotel." The auction house was a sea of tuxedos, champagne, and heavy perfume. The air smelled of money and old leather. When Julian walked in, people turned. He was the young disruptor. But when they saw Elias walking a step behind him, the whispers started. Elias was wearing his Sunday best, a charcoal suit that was clean and pressed but clearly dated, with wide lapels from a bygone era. He didn't look like a billionaire. He looked like exactly what he was, a working man in a room of aristocrats. "Who's the charity case Thorne brought?" someone whispered loud enough to be heard. "Probably his driver." "How quaint." Julian stiffened, his jaw clenching. "Ignore them, Elias." "I always do, Mr. Thorne," Elias said calmly. His eyes were scanning the room, not at the people, but at the cars displayed on the rotating podiums. They approached the VIP section. Waiting there was Sterling Vance. Vance was Julian's rival, a hedge fund manager who treated art and cars as asset classes, not passions. He was the one who had thrown his keys at Elias earlier that day. Well, Vance smirked, sipping a martini. The tech boy wonder. And, is that the valet? Vance laughed, shaking his head. Julian, this is an auction, not a soup kitchen. You can't bring the help. He's my advisor, Julian said coldly. Vance cackled. Advisor? Does he advise you on how to park in a straight line? Look, Julian, save yourself the embarrassment. The GTO coming up? It's out of your league. It's out of his universe. Elias stepped forward, his voice low and gravelly. The GTO is a beautiful car, Mr. Vance. But beauty can be deceptive. It is wise to look under the paint. Vance sneered. Get me a refill, old man, and keep your wisdom to yourself. The lights dimmed. The auctioneer took the podium. The heavy hitters took their seats. The main event was starting. The curtains parted, and a collective gasp filled the room. It was stunning. A bright red, Rosso Corsa, 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. It was aggressive, curvaceous, and shone under the spotlights like wet blood. Ladies and gentlemen, the auctioneer boomed. The Holy Grail. One of the most significant cars in automotive history. Matching numbers. Full provenance. Restored by the legendary workshop in Maranello. Bidding starts at $20 million. The room erupted. Paddles shot up. 22 million. 25. 30. Julian sat on the edge of his seat, sweat prickling his neck. He wanted this car. It was the ultimate status symbol. He raised his paddle. 32 million. Vance, sitting 2 rows ahead, turned and winked at Julian. He raised his paddle. 35 million. The room went silent. $35 million. Julian looked at Elias. Do I go to 40? I can do 40. Elias didn't answer. He was staring at the car on the stage. He squinted. He took a pair of thick-rimmed glasses out of his pocket and put them on. He wasn't looking at the shiny paint. He was looking at the panel gaps. He was looking at the way the exhaust hung. Elias? Julian hissed. Get me closer, Elias whispered. What? I can't. If you are going to spend $40 million, Mr. Thorne, get me closer. Now. There was an authority in Elias's voice that Julian had never heard before. It wasn't the voice of a valet. It was the voice of a master. Julian stood up. Hold the bidding, he shouted. The auctioneer paused, looking annoyed. Mr. Thorne, this is highly irregular. I want to inspect the vehicle, Julian demanded. Before I place my final bid. The vehicle has been inspected by our experts, the auctioneer said dismissively. Then you have nothing to hide, Julian countered. Vance laughed. Let the boy look. Let his advisor kick the tires. It'll just make his defeat sweeter. Reluctantly, the auctioneer nodded. 2 minutes. Julian and Elias walked up to the stage. The crowd murmured, amused by the spectacle. Elias walked slowly around the car. He ran a gloved hand over the rear fender. He knelt down and looked at the suspension arms. Then, he asked the handler to pop the hood. The V12 engine was revealed. It was a work of art. 12 cylinders, 6 Weber carburetors, a maze of polished metal and rubber. To everyone in the room, it looked perfect. Elias leaned in. He pulled a small penlight from his pocket. He shone it down into the dark crevices of the engine bay, near the firewall. He stayed there for a long time. Well? Vance shouted from the crowd. Did you find a penny down there, Grandpa? Elias stood up. He took off his glasses. He looked at Julian, and for the first time, he looked sad. Don't buy it, Elias whispered. What? Why? Julian whispered back frantically. It's perfect. It's a ghost, Elias said. Walk away. I need a reason, Elias. Elias turned to the auctioneer and then to the crowd. He didn't shout, but his voice carried through the silent hall. This chassis number, Elias pointed to the metal plate. Matches the paperwork. The engine number matches the chassis. It is a matching numbers car. Exactly, the auctioneer snapped. Sit down. But, Elias continued, walking to the front of the car. In 1962, the Ferrari factory used a specific welding technique on the front subframe. Gas welding, done by hand. It leaves a very specific, uneven bead. This frame? He pointed to a joint hidden deep near the radiator. This is TIG welded. Machine precise. This frame wasn't made in 1962. It was made in the 80s. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Furthermore, Elias said, pointing to the carburetors. These Weber 38 DCN carburetors have the casting stamped B. Ferrari used stamp B for the GTOs intended for North American racing. B stamps were used on the 250 GTE, the passenger car. They swapped the tags, but they forgot to file off the casting mark on the underside of the intake manifold. The auctioneer was sweating now. This is preposterous. Who are you? Elias ignored him. He looked at Vance. And finally, the engine block. It has the correct serial number stamped on it. But if you run your finger over the pad, you can feel a depression. The metal is lower than the surrounding area. That means the original number was ground off, and this number was stamped over it. This isn't a GTO engine. It's a 250 GT engine, bored out to look like a GTO. The room was dead silent. This is a rebodied replica, Elias declared. A very expensive, very beautiful fake. It is worth perhaps $1 million. Not 40. Vance stood up, his face purple. You're lying. You're just a senile old valet. What do you know about Ferraris? Elias looked at Vance with eyes that had seen decades of grease, gears, and hard work. My name is Elias Thorne, no relation to Julian, he said. 40 years ago, I was the head mechanic for the NART racing team. I built engines for Le Mans. I restored cars for Kings. I lost my shop when my wife got sick, and I sold everything to pay for her treatment. I drive other people's cars now to survive. But I have forgotten more about Ferrari than you will ever know. He turned to the auctioneer. Check the casting date on the transmission tunnel. It will say 1984. The head appraiser of the auction house rushed the stage. He dove under the car with a flashlight. A minute passed. It felt like an hour. The appraiser crawled out. He looked pale. He whispered something to the auctioneer. The auctioneer tapped his microphone. His hand was shaking. Ladies and gentlemen, due to new information regarding provenance, Lot 42 is withdrawn from the auction. Chaos erupted. The news hit the internet before they even left the building. Valet exposes $40 million fraud. Vance had stormed out, humiliated. He had been ready to bid $50 million. Elias had saved him, too, but Vance was too arrogant to be grateful. Julian and Elias stood outside on the balcony, the cool night air washing over them. You saved me $40 million, Julian said, still in shock. I saved you from buying a lie, Elias corrected. There is nothing worse than a machine that pretends to be something it is not. Julian looked at the old man. He saw the weary posture, the worn shoes, the brilliance hiding behind the uniform. Why didn't you tell me who you were? Julian asked. I am a valet, Mr. Thorne. That is who I am now. The world doesn't care what you used to be. The world is wrong, Julian said. Julian pulled out his phone. I'm opening a new division at Nebula. We're starting a classic car investment fund. We're going to buy, restore, and authenticate the rarest cars in the world using technology and expertise. He looked Elias in the eye. I need a CEO for that division. Someone who knows the truth when he sees it. Elias chuckled softly. I'm too old to be a CEO, Julian. Then be my partner. Be the head of acquisition. Name your salary. But you're never parking another car again unless it's your own. Elias looked out at the Miami skyline. For the first time in 20 years, he didn't feel invisible. He felt the hum of an engine starting up, his own life, revving up for one last, glorious lap. I have a condition, Elias said. Anything. That Porsche Vance was driving. The 911 Turbo? Yeah, buy it. It needs a new exhaust manifold. And I'd like to be the one to fix it. Julian laughed, clapping Elias on the shoulder. Done. 6 months later, a video went viral on YouTube. It showed an immaculately restored 1978 Porsche 911 Turbo roaring down the Pacific Coast Highway. Driving it was Elias, wearing a racing suit, smiling like a teenager. In the passenger seat was Julian. The caption read, "The valet who knew more than the billionaires." Elias didn't just get a job, he got his dignity back. And Julian learned the most valuable lesson of his career: value isn't about the price tag on the windshield. It's about the engine underneath. And as for the fake Ferrari? It was seized as evidence in a massive fraud investigation. The auction house was sued. Vance lost millions in reputation. But Elias? Elias was just getting started. What a ride. It just goes to show that wisdom and expertise can be found in the most unexpected places. Elias proved that dignity isn't about your title, it's about your